Hi, can you guys hear us? Great, great. Kristen, when you had your video on and you were part of this, we were able to hear the room. So that might be one way to go about it. Great, we can hear things.
We actually tested this.
Yay!
Is it better? Okay.
Take this one out.
I might try and add one of them back in. Can you hear now, Charlie?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
It's unmuted.
You guys able to hear me? Great.
Can't hear them. Oh.
Hello?
Yes, we heard that. Well, we tested it yesterday. Yeah. Yeah. We're gonna do one last try and then we're gonna just move on. Yeah.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? All right, we're gonna go.
Perfect.
My apologies. Now we have an echo. All right.
Hello, everyone.
No.
As I was saying, you know, technology is a great thing, and it's gonna just keep echoing. You can hear me 3 times. That is your. That's off.
Presentation's off. It's just
For the room. Okay. We're going to talk about immigration today. That is just going to be annoying. We're going to have to take them off, and you're going to just have to do. Yeah. Just tell them bye.
valiant effort.
Yes, thanks for trying. You guys are in great hands with Erica, and she will be able to relay all the info. So thanks so much.
Is it echoing now? No. All right. Fantastic. The people online are really having a whole lot of fun, I'm guessing. So I am so sorry. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your patience, and we will get things going. I'm Connie Ryan. I'm the Director of Interfaith Alliance of Iowa, and this is Crossroads, and we meet on a monthly basis, usually here, and we cover just a wide variety of things. And really, the importance of Crossroads is that we have civil conversation on a variety of different topics. And so one of those topics that is part of our nation today is immigration. And some of the difficulty with that is, how do we have conversation? And particularly with folks who don't necessarily agree with us and use some different rhetoric and things that are difficult. And so we have Erica Johnson with us today, who's going to talk through all of that. Erica is the founding executive director of Iowa Migrant Movement for Justice, a statewide membership-based advocacy and legal service organization. And if you know Erica, you know that she has long been involved in social justice issues, particularly immigration, and I consider her to be one of the foremost experts in our state on all things immigration, and we've worked together for a very long time. And so I'm just grateful for her work and grateful for her voice and grateful for her willingness to teach us. And so I'm going to have Erica take over. Did you turn?
I think it's on, but I don't, is it working? The green light's on.
Yeah, you can talk big.
Talk big, she said, which is super helpful if my 5-year-old was here, because she's really good at talking big, and we have to tell her to adjust volume a lot. Anyway, thank you for having me. It's good to see some familiar faces and some new faces in a full room. I think this is, as we have perhaps all seen, don't touch it. Don't touch anything. As we have perhaps all seen, immigration is a hot topic right now. The polls are showing that it's the thing that people are paying attention to the most in this year's election. So I get why folks are here. Just out of curiosity, have people heard of Iowa MMJ? Some? Well, so if you haven't heard of Iowa MMJ, you may have heard of American Friends Service Committee or Justice for Our Neighbors. So what happened is we were like, hey, we like each other. Maybe we should merge and become one organization so that we're stronger and we're not competing for resources and that kind of thing. So what we did was merge. So we are now Iowa MMJ, and we do 2 things. We do immigration legal services, and we do advocacy and organizing. So that's laid out in this little brochure. And so the folks who were here virtually, who aren't here now, are colleagues from an organization called the Opportunity Agenda. which is kind of laid out on this packet, which I realize is very small print and very hard to read. We can email all the materials, of course. So the Opportunity Agenda is a longtime national partner that I have worked with on social justice issues for probably since 2008. And in 2019, I don't know if some folks remember, but we were actually in this room. This room? It was like over there, that part of this room, with them in 2019, right before the pandemic, trying to start thinking through narrative about immigrant rights in Iowa. Was anybody here at that meeting? Anybody here was at that meeting? Can anyone remember that far back? My point is, we have been thinking about the need to figure out narrative work, strategic narrative change campaigns is what I call it, for a long time. And so today we're going to talk about the reality of where we're at right now in Iowa, including the state legislation, if we have time, that recently passed the State House and the governor signed, what, last week? And then we're going to talk about the research that we have been doing on how to change the conversation, because the one that we're having on immigration right now is not a good one. It doesn't produce good, healthy things for our communities, for anyone. So what is narrative? This is the thing that the Opportunity Agenda was going to dig into. Now I have to. That'll be fun. But what is it? Just kind of tell me, where are you coming from? If I could get like maybe 4 ideas of what narrative is. Story. A frame. Nice. Message. Have you been looking at the materials I handed out? So now the next question is, what is the dominant narrative, right? Because we've got, so narratives, yes, it's the story or the larger picture, or according to the heartbeat that underlines and undergirds everything on like how we think about a particular issue. So the dominant narrative is the one that's currently winning, that is the most used, that is the most recognized. So if, so the next question is, what's the dominant narrative regarding immigration in Iowa, do you think? Invasion. Criminals. Broken. It's what? Perfect? Broken. Biden. Okay, I kid you not. You guys just like aced the bingo card that we didn't actually do this, but we talked about doing it. We spent a lot of time, the advocacy team spent a lot of time at the State House this year. I hate the State House. I hate being there. I don't know how Connie does it. Like, I think it just eats away at your soul if you're there. And I deeply appreciate the people who do that work, but I hate being there. So I was there a lot this year, and thankfully I have 2 organizers now who are there too. So it wasn't just me. But whenever we sat in subcommittee meetings or committee meetings or even floor debate, we could see that the state legislators who were sponsoring, there was a package of 4 anti-immigrant bills this year. We could see that they were reading off a sheet of paper. And they always said the same thing. Biden, 16 million, fentanyl, what were some other ones that you said? Invasion, the border. It was insane how on topic they were. They had talking points and they were literally reading them, and they were the same ones every single time. Representative Hulk, Senator Garrett, what's his face, Whitver, like all of them. What's his face? Yeah. So I also, we had issues with technology, and I was going to throw another technology thing in the mix. I'm not going to. Don't look at me like that. We've recently, because of this state law that passed, we've recently started getting some hate mail, emails and voicemails to Iowa MMJ. And one of them, I was going to play it. That's why I was like thrown in the technology. I decided not to. But it's 2.5 minutes of this woman, the area code's from Massachusetts, and she's hitting all of those points. So it's not just, my point is the dominant narrative runs from top to bottom, from the people in charge of the State House, from Kim Reynolds, the statement that she put out when she signed that bill was also those like 4 or 7 points. It's the state legislators who are introducing the bills, and it's the people who are calling me, telling me that I'm a terrible person because I support I won't use the word because I know this is live and recorded, but support undocumented folks. So the point is, why does narrative matter? It matters because it turns into the policies, the rhetoric, the campaign rhetoric, the way people are talking about these issues actually does turn into the policies that impact us in our communities and our daily lives. And I think the other thing that's kind of important is that communications machines drive narratives. And what do I mean by communications machines? The media, yeah. Even I think probably communications arms of campaigns. So we don't have that. Iowa MMJ doesn't have that. We don't have a communications staff person at all. We don't have, you know, like our own TV station. That's why we need all of you and other ambassadors around the state and country to help us drive the narrative towards one that we think is more welcoming. Okay, so real quick, the law. I should have passed this one out already. Sorry, I was bombarding people with papers. So what we have, just real quick, a quick overview of Senate File 2340, which is the law that I mentioned the governor signed last week, I think. So this is a copycat of Texas's SB4. Folks seeing what's going on in Texas. This is a non-constitutional law, anti-immigrant, that has been blocked, I've lost track of how many times, has been blocked by the courts because it preempts federal law by allowing local law enforcement, and in Iowa judges, local law enforcement and judges to order people deported. There has historically been a very bright line between the enforcement of US immigration laws as reserved for ICE agents and enforcement agents on the federal level versus local police. Because US immigration laws are controlled at the federal level and they're extremely complicated, archaic, unjust, et cetera, et cetera. But it passed, and it's one of the most anti-immigrant state bills I've seen in the last 2 decades. And guess what? 3 Democrats voted for it. Turek, Judge, and Forbes. 1 Republican voted against it. Shoot, what was his name? Pelosi. Pelosi voted against it. So this is not always a straight party line issue. So a little bit about what we've been seeing then. The reason why we've been getting hate mail over the last couple of days is because we have been really busy attempting to mobilize the community and respond to the needs of the community. So right now what we're seeing is that people are freaked out, and so they're afraid, and they have bad information. Because the law is so badly written, that we don't know how it's going to be implemented. So we've got some cops that are running around saying, this isn't going to change anything. You don't need to be afraid. We've heard that, but it doesn't seem like they really understand what the law says because it's really badly written. And frankly, we don't know how it's going to be enforced because it's so badly written. Yeah. Both of them. Shouting, I'm shouting, I'm shouting. So we've done a lot of community meetings, both virtual and in person. We're putting together materials, posting on our social media, again, as much as humanly possible when we don't have a communications team. So that's the first thing that we've been doing. The second thing that we've been doing is trying to figure out a litigation strategy so that we can sue and block the bill, because it is unconstitutional, and that's been a really effective strategy in Texas, where they've been able to block the law from taking effect. And the third thing that we're doing is trying to use this as a moment to really build out our advocacy work, our coalition work, and we're asking people to help us collect statements from, you know, all sectors of the community for people who don't support this bill: law enforcement, municipal leaders, editorial boards at local newspapers, other like community agencies, that kind of thing. So that's something you all can be helping with. Okay, so we know that the dominant narrative is harming our communities. So how do we change that? So this is going to be several minutes of me trying to explain stuff that is not my expertise. The stuff I just explained, totally my wheelhouse. Here's what I do know is that this stuff is really important, and we realized it was important about 3 years ago when Governor Reynolds, it was not the first round of unaccompanied children coming to the border, and she said, you can't come here, you are not welcome in Iowa. We issued a press release and we said, what? Of course they're welcome here, they're children, and this is Iowa. Of course they're welcome, we are welcoming. 2 weeks later, she sent the National Guard. We sent another press release and said, what are you doing? Of course they're welcome. 2 weeks later, she sent the State Patrol. And this was 3 years ago, right? She's done this all how many times since then? The governor. We realized that it didn't matter what we were saying if it was landing on unfertile soil. You like that? My little like gardener Iowa agriculture reference. So we figured out we needed to just shut up and listen. So we did a bunch of focus groups. We were part of a national cohort with other rural spaces in other states, Michigan, New York, Nevada, and North Carolina. And we really just asked people, what does belonging mean to you? What is immigration? What do you think of when you think of immigration? We asked people who have the lived experience of migration themselves. We asked people who don't have the lived experience of migration themselves. And so some of that is here. And you can't read this at all. But the reason we did that is because we wanted to figure out, kind of map the constellation of the narrative of immigration in Iowa to get a better understanding of where we're starting. Because it doesn't matter where you want to be if you're not taking into account where you're starting. So we did all these focus groups with the opportunity agenda. I did a 6-month-long like narrative change fellowship with them and with other advocates and communicators from across the country. And so the big findings were that Iowans are older and whiter and more conservative and more racist than our counterparts in other states. Ouch. I know, whole lot of ouch. But again, it doesn't matter where you want to be if you're not recognizing where you are, the truth of where you are. And I think for me, like when I heard that, I was like, yeah, but like we talk about Robert Ray and we talk about the Underground Railroad and we talk about civil unions. Like there are certain things Iowans hold up. And they're like, look at this wonderful thing we did 100 years ago. Look at this wonderful thing we did 50 years ago. So we're not there anymore. Something has changed, something has happened, something or someone or some ones have captured the narrative and drug it in a different direction. And I think it's really important for us to realize that, however awful it makes us feel. So that was a big finding. Another big finding is that like race and the economy are factors that people really identified with, that either negatively or positively, that like if you're struggling economically, that's something that is a big deal to you. If race matters to you, that's something that is really highly motivating to you. A third thing in terms of high-level findings that I'll mention is that it's good news. Sorry, all this doom and gloom. It's good news. People are movable. We found that there were certain messages that rang true with Iowans where they are. And they were movable, it was like 5 percentage points or something. It's not a lot. But here's the thing, is that narrative change is not a quick fix. And it's not a silver bullet. It's not the thing that we have to do. It is a thing that we have to do, along with a bunch of other things. So we can move people 5 points this year, next year, or the next 5 years, over the next 10 years, over the next 20 years, over the next couple of generations. I might not be around for that. We might not be around for that, but it matters what we're doing now in order to move us in that direction. And we can't, there's a lot of double negatives running through my head. We can't not do anything. Is that right? Yeah. So that's the good news, that people are movable. How much time do I have left? I gotta leave a bunch of time for questions, right? I can do that. Okay. So there are, I can't see either. So there's some really clear messaging language in here. It's hard to see. Contribution, the freedom to thrive. These are kind of the themes that really like hit home with people. Order. How do we have a system, an immigration system that isn't like as broken? Oh, look, that makes sense and is provides some level of order so that people can navigate the system. I was thinking about this the other day, and it's like, hey, tax day. Taxes are awful and the system is confusing and complicated, but by and large, people are in a place where now they can kind of file by themselves if they want to. So what if we had an immigration system like that, where you could navigate the paperwork by yourself and you didn't have to pay $20,000 for an immigration attorney to do it for you? Just something to think about. So there were some key themes, and those are here in the pack out, even though you can't really see them, I realize. Okay, so we came up with some strategic guidelines. The Opportunity Agenda, in their infinite knowledge of narrative and messaging that I don't have, but have learned a lot from them, came up with some specific guidance for Iowa that resulted in this. So this is on your tables. There's extra copies here on the table too. I know I didn't get everybody, I tried to. So what we did was we took the findings and we built a narrative frame for Iowa on the issue of immigrant rights, on the issue of immigration. This is what we know and love. We know that it's not the only community that's being targeted and is vulnerable in this moment, but this is our issue. This is what we know and love, like I said. So this is where we started. But the idea is that other communities can also use this. So where we started was that we've got this idea of all of us identifying as Iowa nice. Do you remember last year at the state fair when Governor Reynolds was sitting down with Governor DeSantis at this fair side chat, she called them? There's hay bales, that whole thing. There were some protesters, maybe those protesters are here, protesters who tried to interrupt, and her response was, that's not how we behave. We are Iowans, we are Iowa nice. Stop it. So, so we wanted to kind of play with that a little bit, and we recognize that the identity, like there is some identity wrapped in the conduct of Iowa nice. People, like I said, Governor Ray, the Underground Railroad, right? We have some things that we identify with, but it's different based on your experience. And some people are like, Iowa nice just means passive aggressive and apathetic and not wanting to dig into the issues. And so it was a nice kind of catch-all for us as we kind of grappled with how something that we can all unify around. And so the idea is that we wanted to redefine the concept of Iowa nice and unite all Iowans to reclaim a prosperous and inclusive Iowa. Because the fact is that without immigrants and refugees, we do not have a prosperous Iowa. Immigrants and refugees are the backbone of our economy. They're the backbone of rural communities. They're the backbone of rural schools. And if we don't have immigrants and refugees in our state doesn't have a very prosperous future. That's just the truth. So you can see then kind of just going through this messaging guide is that there's various communication goals. We want to reject and expose the dominant narrative, which tends towards white supremacist, passive aggressive. We want to advance a pro-immigrant narrative. All of these things, alignment with other progressive causes, make an Iowa that, a progressive Iowa that doesn't only seem possible, but is irresistible. Imagine that. Understand the variety of audiences that we're communicating with and what our specific audience goals are. That's really key because you have to figure out who you're talking to. Because again, it doesn't matter what you're saying if you don't understand what people are able to hear. And so thinking through your audience is really important. Also, though, mobilizing audiences that are already primed to support pro-immigrant narratives and to chip away at harmful mindsets of reachable audiences and to neutralize anti-immigrant sentiment talking points. So those are kind of our broad goals. As you can see, they're kind of, it's not just immigrant rights, right? These can be applied to a lot of different things. The audience, we wanted to be really specific again about the audiences that we're talking to. And those are identified as persuadable over here on the left side of the paper In the middle, people who already care about these issues. And then on the right is people who are kind of leaning away from us, but might be persuadable. We can't discount them. We've got to figure out how to talk to each other. So then the next couple of pages, it's kind of, you start at the top and you go through like this. And I don't know how many people have gone through a narratives training. That was something else my colleagues were going to do, but we could set that up another time perhaps, but it just kind of teaches you how to start with a value, frame the issue and the value that connects with the person you're talking to, the audience that you're talking to, translate that into something concrete, give some key facts to support your message. Sharing examples is great, and then ending by redefining what it is you're asking for, the solution. So that's what this whole section is. Starting with like identifying the value that you want to talk about. That's hard to read too. Continuing with a statement that identifies that value. Clearly identifying the problem or the value that you see is being violated. Talking about some key facts supporting messages, stories there. And then ending with your solution. Well, actually ending with bottom line. This is what I think we should do. So the values that we are encouraging people to use are centered around family, community, contributions, workforce strengthening, and order. Those were the 5 that seemed to hit with Iowa audiences, and then we created the framework under each one just as an example that people can use. We've been using it, or you can kind of put your own things on there too. It's designed to be, what do I want to say? Designed to be like usable, so you can use your own words and you don't have to use mine. Couple of things to consider is that, yeah, some of the messages are meant to fire up your base, while others aren't. Helping people on the fence come to our side, and some are meant to neutralize other conservative talking points. So, what's up? I mean, what's next, I guess? What's up? What's next? So, narrative work, this is something that we're really invested in. It's one of our 4 legs of our advocacy stool, piano bench. Our advocacy program is made up of 4 things. We do grassroots organizing, we work with coalition partners like Interfaith Alliance, and we do electoral organizing, civic engagement. The narrative change piece is the 4th part of those. So when I said earlier that, you know, narrative change isn't the like silver bullet that's going to fix all of this, but it's a part of a broader strategy that we really believe in when we talk about building a movement for immigrant rights. That's what we mean. We need people, we need narrative, we need electoral power. And the other thing to reiterate is that this is nowhere near immediate. We started working on this. I remember we were on like a family vacation at Camp Quaker Heights in 2020 when Governor Reynolds did this, and I was sitting there putting together a press release. I was like, Mom, can you edit this? It's my mom over there. And she did. And it's taken us 3 years just to shut up and listen and come up with this framework. And so we launched this in December. We've just started using it. We've been recruiting people all over the state that can serve as ambassadors and help us with this work. The point is it takes a long time, and we're in it for the long haul. We recognize that. So please use this tool in your networks, in everything you do. If you're putting together a Facebook post, try using some of these frames, some of this. Try plugging it in. If you're writing a letter to the editor, same thing. If you're talking, like Thanksgiving is far away, but if you're having a conversation and you want to try out some of this like listening and targeted audiences work, try it out there. The idea is that we're in a stage of we call it, like, think of it as inoculation, where we're just trying out some of these messages, and we're learning as we go. We have already made some edits. We assume that there will be more. The point is that I know that there's a lot of people who value these progressive causes in this room. I think there's probably a lot of us who have high hopes that a certain party would save us. And I'm here to say that's not happening. Again, 3 Democrats voted for this awful bill. So my challenge to you all is to use it, to simply use it. See how it works. Be in communication with us if you find things that are working or aren't working. We're happy to edit it. What else? All right, I'll shut up. You talk.
Thank you, Erica. If you have questions, raise your hand. I'll bring the microphone to you. And I know this has been a little bit of a frustrating event, but hopefully you'll get your questions in.
I hope that there are more of those handouts. Meanwhile, could you tell us some of those phrases that you wanted to use, or if you told us I didn't get them? Thank you.
So the values are kind of outlined in this document. So family, community, contributions, workforce strengthening, and order are the values that we identified that when you use messaging around those values, those are things that resonate with audiences in Iowa. So, you know, as an example on workforce strengthening, Iowans have always valued hard work and dedication and commitment to using one's job to provide for their families. So that's the value statement. Iowans value this. I value this. My family values this. While Iowans value hard work, a powerful few are trying to make working conditions less safe and more strenuous, all without improving people's pay and benefits. To distract, I can't read. To distract from this, private interests are scapegoating immigrants and those seeking to strengthen our economy rather than truly investing in all workers' rights to thrive. Immigrants play a vital role in the economy and workforce, and Iowans depend on their contributions to the community. By ensuring the safety and full humanity of all workers, Iowans can improve economic conditions for everyone. Iowans need to stand together as workers, immigrants, and non-immigrants together, demanding that corporations provide fair wages and stop turning workers against each other. Iowa Nice means recognizing that all work matters and protecting everyone's right to thrive, not just the wealthy and well-connected. Iowa Nice means that Iowans reject the scapegoating of anyone trying to provide a better life for themselves, and instead hold those who seek to make our life more difficult to account. So it kind of like the flow is that you identify a value, in this case, workforce strengthening. You create a sentence to talk about that value and why you value it, or your family, or your community, or your faith community, whatever. You then kind of pivot to talk about how that value is being violated in the policy that you're seeing, in the talking points that you're seeing. Give an example or some facts that help support what you've just said, and then kind of round it out by bringing it all together and kind of, in this case specifically, we tied it back to the Iowa Nice thing. Bottom line, Iowa Nice means protecting all workers. So, did that answer the question?
Yeah.
Cool.
We are a perfect population for telling stories that will support our immigrant brothers and sisters, because so many of our healthcare, nursing home staffs are staffed by people who are in that immigrant population. I just moved to Scottish Rite. We have people who are immigrants working there, and they are awesome. We could not do what we do. We could not be who we are without them. So as an aging population, we have for sure some motivation for telling stories that will impact healthcare, that will impact nursing home staffs, that will impact all of the services. And we can tell those stories. So yeah.
I think what my mind was doing as you were talking, Julie, is kind of like I hear some of the values in what you're saying. So like, for example, contributions, right? So if you were trying to speak to a specific audience that maybe isn't in this room, that is persuadable, but they're not quite on our side. You would say everything that you said, but frame it more in like the contributions and the idea that that everyone has something to contribute and we all depend on each other. And again, going back to this prosperous future, like the fact is, again, that Iowa only has a prosperous future if immigrants and refugees are a part of the solution or are a part of our communities. Cool. Thank you. Yeah, love it.
So I have a question about your organization. Are you a 501c3 or 4 or both? And do you or how do you interact with Lutheran Services of Iowa, which works with immigrants? I know Catholic Charities work with immigrants. How do you bring all of these organizations together for the same purpose?
Yeah. So we are a 501c3, a nonprofit organization established in the state of Iowa. And we work with a lot of organizations, partner organizations around the state, including LSI, including the refugee resettlement agencies. With some like LSI and Catholic Charities, we have really formal relationships where like for LSI gets a federal grant to provide citizenship classes to folks. Those folks who go through those classes at LSI then come to us to file their paperwork to become U.S. citizens. So we create, and this is one of the things that I love about us, lots of organizations can register people to go to vote and mobilize people to vote, but we can actually make voters. And we make around 300 new voters per year through that partnership with LSI and other folks. Oh, thank you. But yeah, so we work with lots of folks around the state. Yeah.
I heard you say just a second ago, you used the words immigrant and refugees. Don't you think that Iowans see the refugees as people who are coming because they are being oppressed? Immigrants are people who are storming our borders, and we have to be wary. And I think just those two words make a huge difference in how people take a look at people who are not from here and how they react to them. Do you see that or not?
I think what you're doing is identifying one of the dominant messages in Iowa, or perhaps nationally. That's something that we see. And it's almost turned into something that's a little, to me, that seems a little bit intentional. Because if you have an immigrant community and a refugee community who are pitted against each other, then that's less power for everyone. When in fact, the barriers that immigrants and refugees face are often the same. Language, discrimination, like lack of affordable housing, workplace abuse, all of these things are the same, and fighting them theoretically and bringing about concrete solutions that are beneficial for the entire community would be a heck of a lot easier if we were all working together. So when I think that you're right, that the dominant narrative in Iowa and across the nation is that refugees have done it the right way, and immigrants have not done it the right way. When in fact, migration is a fact of humanity, which is why we say migration is a human right, and why our name is Iowa Migrant Movement for Justice, because we know that migration is a human right because it's what human beings do, and we always have done. So once we identify what the dominant narrative, some of it's also kind of thinking about who benefits from this dominant narrative. Who benefits if immigrants and refugees at the Tyson Perry plant are working against each other rather than working with each other to make sure that they get bathroom breaks or that they're paid a fair wage, all of this. So it is something we spend a lot of time thinking about. I'm not sure that I actually answered your question, but it's a helpful tool to think about, identifying what the dominant narrative is and why, and then how we can talk about it and shift it so that we are more powerful as a community.
I like that. Bringing it together as migrant movement.
In this room on May 18th, Amos is going to have a session on how to work together and build community and work on issues like this. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Plug for Amos. Love it.
Getting back to Representative John Forbes, he has announced to run for Polk County Supervisor position. So along with the narrative, and our duty as Iowans is to challenge him. So I'm not real thrilled that he voted the way he did, and now he's going to be one of my supervisors, which means he's going to have a lot of power here in Polk County. Right, right. But there is talk that it's kind of in the bag. So I think it's really important to challenge him. Why did he vote that way? Because that kind of goes against a lot of our party objectives. And he's trying to gain power in a place that is, you know, got a lot of refugees and immigrants. And then just getting back to, a lot of families have legal immigrants and refugees in them, but because they live in large families, many of their family members might be illegal. I know that's not the right term, but undocumented. Thank you, Jackie. So it's important to remember that some people go about it this way, but other people in their family might be in a different position document-wise.
On that, I just wanted to mention, it's a good point. A lot of families are what we call mixed status families, and some have status and some don't. And so with the new law that passed, that's something that's particularly troublesome, because like we've got clients, you know, who may have been deported and come back to the country. For example, remember Postville? Remember the Postville raid that happened? Remember all of the underage children who were working at the plant and got deported and later qualified as, I think they were T visas, right? So those people would be deportable under this law. Iowa law enforcement would be able to deport those children who were working at the plant under abusive conditions and then got deported and came back to Iowa and now have status. Maybe other members of their family don't, but that just, I just wanted to give that example to highlight how crazy this law is, how terrible it is. And number two, I haven't heard directly, I saw some emails about why, I can't remember which of the three Democrats it was that voted for this law. Maybe it's better because I don't actually want to throw people under the bus, but I do think accountability is really important. But they said that they voted this way because they felt like they had to, because they lived in a competitive district. So what that tells me is that the Democratic Party in Iowa understands, probably not just in Iowa, understands what the dominant narrative issue is, the dominant narrative is on this issue, and they're going to follow the political winds to their benefit. So our job, I think, in part, at least, is to not just use the narrative frame that we've put together, but also to challenge elected officials to figure out how to talk about this issue for once. Because they don't know how, especially the Democratic Party in Iowa has never known how to talk about this issue. So they default to the dominant narrative, and I would really like for them not to do that.
So we're sitting in a room full of people from different faith traditions. And I'm just curious how many of us have heard a sermon or had particular things about welcoming the stranger or loving one another lately. I think we're a whole group of people who are missing the point.
Last week.
Why am I not surprised?
I gotta have a response for everything. So another thing that I didn't talk about, so this is the first phase, or the research was the first phase of this project. The next phase is this inoculation phase, where we're asking all of you to help us with this and try it out and help us adjust as we go. At some point, we're gonna have to figure out how to really intentionally pull in faith communities, faith leaders, artists, and influencers, because I think that if we actually want to change the heartbeat of our state and our communities and how we think about this issue, we're going to have to speak to people's hearts and souls in ways that this doesn't. Like, this isn't facts and figures. Facts and figures don't work. I've learned that. They don't work. This is a step beyond facts and figures, values, right? It's a good tool, but I also believe that it's going to be the art and the love and the beauty and the spiritual identity that actually carries us over the finish line. So to that end, I agree. And Just Faith has been working with us on this project too. Have folks heard of Just Faith? So they provide a curriculum for faith communities. It's non-denominational, but it's specifically designed. It's like an 8-week course, and you can have a small group that works through it together to really see your spiritual practices in the topic of immigrant rights and immigration. So that's an awesome resource. Let me know. I can get it to you.
Life is complicated. Issues are very complex. Republicans are really good at making them simple, pithy. As an organizer in my community, this is one thing I keep hearing. You know, I love this approach for talking to people. I think it's really important as a way of making connections and not putting people off. But also, I think it's important to have things, we talk about people over politics, for example, and having something that you can start with by saying that will stick for people. And that's what my volunteers are always saying, you know, give me something that we use across the state that we can all say and stick in people's minds and then come to this. Does that make sense?
I think what I'm hearing you say perhaps is like help, or maybe I'm just projecting because this is what I want. Help with like content. Like, this is good for figuring out like a letter to the editor. Great. We've been using this on all of our like communications materials about the state legislative stuff since the beginning of session. Super helpful for that. We've also just recently started kind of pulling together some social media graphics with some shorter, kind of catchier things. So check out our Facebook page. We've been posting them once a week, like maybe every Tuesday, I can't remember. But if you go back and look through our Facebook posts and Instagram, you'll see, hopefully you'll recognize that some of this stuff we're trying to be just really in your face about in shorter tidbits than this. This is not on Facebook.
I was reminded about the comment about churches, and I realized that when I sit in this room, this is my home church area, that I think everybody is from Plymouth in this room, when she reminded me that not everybody is. Well, you are all welcome. And what I want to say is that in response to you about speaking to the issue is, every time we start a service here, we say, no matter who you are or where you are on life's journey, you are always welcome here.
I love it. A shout out for Plymouth, a shout out for Amos, another shout out.
And just a reminder that we are interfaith, so we're not all Plymouth because we're not all Christian. So I want to ask a question. Very experiential. So you're sitting at a family reunion and you're sitting across from Uncle Bubba.
Bubba. Are you having Uncle Bubba?
And Uncle Bubba says, you know, I was just reading about all of those who are invading Iowa. And I don't know what to do about it, but, you know, like, we need to do something about it. That's what Uncle Bubba says.
What do I say?
What does Erica Johnson, the niece of Uncle Bubba?
My dad's laughing.
Sorry, Dad. How do you have that conversation? What do you say? Literally, what do you say? And how do you engage Uncle Bubba in the conversation?
Great question, Connie.
I don't have an Uncle Bubba, but I have other relatives. So, yeah.
I don't either,
Mostly
that I'm
cousins.
aware of.
Yeah.
But there is a state legislator called Bubba.
No, you're talking to your uncle. So,
Okay.
what do you say to Uncle Bubba?
So often it is hard to just go into this stuff in a conversation. Like, I'm not going to be like, well, Uncle Bubba, Iowans appreciate family and others. What I have found is helpful is responding with a question, because I think it's also really important to not assume that we know where the other person is coming from. So if nothing else, asking a question buys me some time. What do you mean by that? What do you mean by invasion? And kind of like dig into what that is. I think I probably would pivot then pretty quickly to what we see in Iowa. Well, actually, I think what we're seeing is that our rural communities have been struggling, and brain drain, holy brain drain, has been a thing since I was a wee one. And it's still a thing now. Our rural communities, dating back to the farm crisis, have struggled, continue to struggle. Our families in rural spaces continue to struggle. But I know that in places like Marshalltown, where we spend a lot of time, where I have spent a lot of time, that those downtown communities have been revitalized by the contributions, both economic and cultural, of other communities. And I know for a fact that in Marshalltown, anybody from Marshalltown? Yeah? I had conversations with folks when I was organizing in Marshalltown. When I was organizing in Marshalltown about 20 years ago, I remember talking to this is kind of Bubba related sort of, but who talked about how the Norwegians and the Swedes back in the old days would come downtown, but the Norwegians would be on one side of the square and the Swedes would be on the other side of the square, and they didn't talk to each other. Again, migration is a thing that happens, and people settle in communities together, and they congregate together, and they contribute, and over the passage of time, we are stronger together, and we get there. But it takes work, and it takes acknowledging people's contributions, Uncle Bubba. So I would just preach at him, basically, is my answer.
I know that we lost a little bit of time at the beginning, but I want to honor that a lot of folks have somewhere else to go. So help me to thank Erica, please.
Thank you.
And again, my apologies for our technology problems at the beginning and the frustration around that. Believe me, I'm the most frustrated person in the room. So, but I'm really glad Erica could be here and could give us this information. Next month, so Crossroads is always the third Friday of the month. Next month, we have the soon-to-be retired, depending on how long the legislature hangs around, hopefully not very long, soon-to-be retired Representative 𝘵𝘩 Abdul-Samad. And he's just going to share with us, 𝘵𝘩, he's just going to talk and talk about his legacy. But also, I will tell you, we are going to honor him and his legacy and all that he has done, not only at the legislature and Des Moines School Board, but also our collaborative work that we have always done together with him, particularly around stopping hate, bigotry, and violence, issues around gun safety, and a whole lot of other things. So I hope that you will return. It is, I think, May 17th, whatever that third Friday is, and whether you're here in person or online. And I can guarantee you we won't have the technology issues because he's just going to talk, so and be in the room. How many of you got the invitation to the award celebration? If you did not, there are extras over on the table. It is June 6th. And if you haven't heard, I don't know who hasn't heard, Heather Cox Richardson is our featured guest. And I told a couple of folks earlier that I've known this since November, and I had to not say it out loud. So we are delighted that she will be here. It's not going to be a keynote as we traditionally have done for that event. It is going to be, she's going to be in conversation with Rekha Basu. So it is just going to be fabulous. And then we also are going to honor Rob Sand with our Joy Corning Public Leader Award, and we're going to honor League of Women Voters, who we work with a lot on issues. So I hope you will join us. And as I said, there's extras there. If you're on our email list, you'll see that as well. I would tell you, register earlier rather than later, because there is a lot of interest in this event. So we want to make sure that all of our friends are in the room. So thank you. Have a wonderful weekend and take care.